Of all the figures in the long history of the galaxy, there were few who had as much impact as Revan. Known in equal parts as a Jedi hero and a feared Lord of the Sith, reviled by some as Revan the Butcher and praised by others as the savior of the galaxy, few beings accomplish so much while remaining so utterly mysterious. Not even his true name is known, to say nothing of his fiercely debated true motivations. We did a video on Revan many years ago, but it left his story incomplete, and today we'll be revisiting the Legend of Revan, exploring his history, his beliefs, and the question of what his true motivations were.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
Revan was power. It was like staring into the heart of the Force. Even then you could see the Jedi he would slay etched on his soul.
The man known to history as Revan was born in the years after the Great Sith War. Which planet he came from is a mystery, but popular belief holds that he was born somewhere in the Outer Rim, beyond the borders of the Republic, and that was what had drawn him into the unknown time and again throughout his life, the call of home. Wherever he came from, he was found by the Jedi at a young age and spent most of his childhood and young adult years between the Jedi Temple on Coruscant, the Jedi Enclave on Dantooine, and other, more obscure Jedi praxeums spread across Republic space. From early on, Revan was recognized for his incredible potential. His strength in the Force was unrivaled, as was his skill and his hunger for knowledge. Together with another young Jedi named Alec, a close friend with whom Revan trained regularly, Revan was considered one of the Jedi Order's greatest prodigies, a new hope for an order that was still recovering from the grievous losses of the Great Sith War. When Revan became a Padawan, he was apprenticed to one of the Jedi Order's most controversial but respected masters, a Jedi historian and philosopher who lived at the temple on Coruscant. This master later went by the name Kreia, and she may or may not have been the same person as the renowned master Aaron Kay, also acknowledged as a teacher of Revan. Revan learned everything he could from his first master, and when there was nothing more she could teach him, he traveled to many other planets with Alec, receiving training from many other masters. He and Alec trained under Master Jar Leston and Master Dorak, both members of the Jedi Council, at the Jedi Enclave on Tatooine, learning numerous techniques and much of the Jedi Order's history and obscure lore. They found that Revan in particular had an insatiable lust for knowledge, something some of the other Jedi Masters, most notably Vrook Lamar, found dangerous. This was a minority view, however, and most of the Jedi Masters believed that Revan and Alec would go on to become champions of the Jedi Order. As a Padawan, Revan learned everything he could from them, and then, at the end of his training, he returned to his first master, from whom he sought to learn the one thing the others were unwilling to teach.
Came to me, yes, both before and after, before Revan knew himself, and after, in the times when Revan was coming into his own and learning he was more than he had been told. At one time, Revan was my Padawan, in times past, long ago. But Revan, when he had learned all he could, had other masters, that fool Jar and other Jedi on other planets. He learned from each, but in the end, he turned back to me, when he realized there was nothing more to be learned from the Jedi except how one could leave them forever.
Despite this last bit of inquiry, Revan remained in the Order after reaching the rank of Jedi Knight. He became one of the most well-known Jedi in the Order, renowned for his intelligence, charisma, and power, and his knowledge of Jedi teaching rivaled that of many Jedi Masters. But for all he was hailed as a Jedi paragon, Revan had his doubts about the Jedi, as did his longtime partner, Alec. These doubts became pronounced when galactic geopolitics caused a schism within the ranks of the Jedi Order. A schism started by Revan. It began in 3976 BBY, 2 decades after the end of the Great Sith War. The Mandalorians, having recovered from their disastrous defeat above Onderon 20 years before, began conquering systems beyond the borders of the Republic, rapidly expanding across a wide swath of space in the distant Outer Rim. The Galactic Senate, after much debate, refused to get involved, since the Republic was still weak and the Mandalorians weren't attacking any Republic member worlds. But this was a mistake. Over the course of a decade, the Mandalorians built an empire in the Outer Rim, and in 3964 BBY, they launched an all-out invasion of the Republic. The Mandalorian Wars had begun. The tide of the war quickly turned against the Republic. For 2 years, the Republic Navy was driven out of sector after sector, and the Mandalorians advanced even further forward, eventually breaching the borders of the core worlds in an invasion of Duro. The Republic, desperate, asked the Jedi Order for aid, but the Council refused. It believed that the Jedi hadn't recovered enough from the Great Sith War to get involved, and many of the Masters also believed that some darker force was behind the Mandalorian invasion, one that sought to draw the Jedi to the dark side by baiting them into fighting the Mandalorians. The Council wanted time to ascertain the true nature of this enigmatic threat, and in the meantime, they refused to get involved with the war effort. But Revan vehemently disagreed with the Council's decision. He and Alec, who would soon become known as Malak, believed that the Jedi should take action to save the Republic, and even after the Council tried to shut them down, they continued to preach their beliefs to the other Jedi. Many young Jedi agreed with Revan and Malak, and the most proactive among them joined the two powerful knights on an unauthorized mission to the front lines, where they did reconnaissance work for the Republic military. The HoloNet News branded these renegade Jedi Crusaders as Revanchists, and their leader became known as the Revanchist, which was eventually shortened to just Revan. Revan and Malak became widely known by their nom de guerre, and across the Republic, they were celebrated as heroes who insisted on doing the right thing even when the Jedi Council wouldn't. As the Revanchists gained more followers and became increasingly popular, the Jedi Council called for their arrest. A team of Jedi, led by Vrook Lamar, tracked the renegade Crusaders to Cathar, where Revan and company were investigating the disappearance of the planet's entire population, which was rumored to have been the work of the Mandalorians. As Vrook demanded their surrender, however, Revan uncovered a Mandalorian mask in the sands outside an abandoned beachfront city, and the moment he picked it up, the assembled Jedi all had a vision of the Mandalorians exterminating the Cathar, who were unarmed and defenseless. They were opposed by only one of their own, the owner of the mask, who had been killed with the rest. Vrook and the Jedi sent to arrest the Revanchists left to report this discovery to the Council, horrified by the revelation, while Revan claimed the fallen Mandalorian's cause as his own, vowing that he would never remove her mask until the Mandalorians had been defeated. The evidence of the massacre on Cathar was enough for the Jedi Council to grant the Revanchists sanction, if reluctantly so. Revan suggested that his followers could be deputized into the Republic military as a mercy corps under his command, and the Council approved this as well. The Council continued to denounce Revan's actions as being overly hasty and tried to stop more Jedi from joining the Crusaders, but they had little success, especially after Malak began traveling to the different Jedi enclaves on recruiting missions. Revan's mercy corps set to work immediately, leading a fleet of new interdictor cruisers into battle against the Mandalorians at Duro. They arrived just as the Mandalorians were preparing to retreat back to the Outer Rim with hordes of stolen Republic war material, and Revan was able to use his new interdictors to stop them, routing the Mandalorian rearguard and winning at least a token victory for the Republic. Following this battle, Supreme Chancellor Tol Kressa gave Revan the rank of Supreme Commander and put a third of the entire Republic military under his direct command. With many of the Order's best and brightest flocking to his banner, Revan set out to drive the Mandalorians from Republic space. Over the course of the next 2 years, Revan did just that. He proved to not only be a capable commander, but an unrivaled tactical genius, able to win victory after victory against the Mandalorians, despite staggering disadvantages. But the cost of this was high, not just for Revan and his followers, but for the entire galaxy. As Revan soon found, the Mandalorian Wars could not be won cleanly. The Mandalorians were fearsome opponents, pitiless and unrelenting, and to overcome them, Revan and Malak found they had to match the Mandalorians for brutality. Revan sought victory whatever the cost, and as the war went on, he became increasingly willing to sacrifice lives, planets, and even entire sectors to the Mandalorians in order to gain strategic advantages, to take key industrial worlds, or to gain critical opportunities to weaken the Mandalorian war machine. In the Battle of Duxon, one of the bloodiest engagements of the war, Revan ordered tens of thousands to their deaths, many in feints and deliberately high casualty operations, in order to capture one of the Mandalorians' most important strongholds. The battle was a tactical victory for Revan's army, but it came at an enormous cost. For every Mandalorian who fell in the battle, 10 Republic soldiers died with them. Revan's tactics worked. The Republic won crucial battles at Taris, Duxon, and Altair III, driving the Mandalorians from Republic space and then pursuing them into the Outer Rim. But as Revan and his followers became used to these cold, calculating tactics, they began to change. Even as they adopted the Mandalorians' brutal tactics, they adopted aspects of Mandalorian belief as well, though they would never have described it as such. Revan and his followers began to admire strength and revile weakness. Their merciless treatment of their enemies developed into callous disregard for the lives of their allies. They developed a disdain for the Republic, which they perceived as too weak to truly defend itself from external threats, and the Jedi Council, which had been too cowardly to get involved in the war. Even the innocent civilians of the galaxy, the people Revan had gone to war to protect in the first place, became little more than another Dedrick piece, one Revan became willing to sacrifice for victory.
Revan and Malak fought the Mandalorians in battle after battle. They grew to despise weakness, just as the Mandalorians did. In the end, the Mandalorians had taught them through conflict, shaped the Jedi, and turned them into a weapon against the Republic.
Put another way, the Jedi Council's fears were coming true. The pressures of the war were driving Revan, Malak, and their followers to the dark side. The Revanchists resisted at first, but steadily they began to give in. For Revan and Malak, their journey down the dark path was hastened by that trait that had made them such prodigies as apprentices, their desire for knowledge. Not long after joining the war effort, Revan and Malak had briefly returned to the Jedi Enclave on Dantooine, and while on the planet, the two discovered a set of ancient ruins saturated in the dark side. Malak was concerned that the Jedi Council would banish the two from the Order if they entered, but Revan would not be deterred. Inside the ruins, they discovered an ancient star map built by the Rakata, the masters of a dark side-fueled infinite empire that had been forgotten by history. The map was incomplete, but it provided clues pointing toward the location of one of the galaxy's darkest secrets, a factory of immense power known as the Starforge. Seeking the power of the Starforge, Revan began searching for more of these maps as the Mandalorian Wars wore on, accompanied by Malak. Around the time of the Battle of Duxon, Revan discovered another star map on Kashyyyk, and he and Malak found a third on Korriban months later. From Korriban, the two Jedi traveled to Malachor 5, a forgotten bastion of the ancient Sith, where they discovered the Traitor Academy, a fortress of the dark side. There, Revan learned the ways of the Sith and began to fully succumb to the dark side. He then introduced these teachings to Malak, who began to fall as well. Not long after, in 3960 BBY, Revan would select that very planet to host the end of the war, and the beginning of a new one. In the Battle of Malachor 5, the last fleets of Revan and Mandalore tore into one another one final time, fighting a last great battle to decide the fate of the galaxy. Revan assigned one of his greatest generals, Meetra Surik, to lead the main Republic fleet in the battle, and he gave her control of the Mass Shadow Generator, a weapon of last resort that could harness gravitational anomalies in the Malachor system to destroy the Mandalorian fleet. Surik and her fleet were meant to act as bait for the Mandalorians to draw them in, while Revan led another fleet in closing the trap from behind. But the battle didn't exactly go to plan. Revan's arrival was delayed by Mandalorian scouts, and by the time he closed the trap, Surik's fleet was suffering badly. She was forced to activate the Mass Shadow Generator, even as Revan boarded the Mandalorian flagship and slew Mandalore the Ultimate in single combat. The superweapon proved far more destructive than anticipated. Rather than simply crushing the Mandalorian fleet into Malachor's crust, it tore apart the planet, reformed it around the Mass Shadow Generator, and compacted the bulk of both fleets into it, killing thousands of Mandalorians, Jedi, and Republic soldiers in a single brutal instant. This act destroyed the Mandalorians. The survivors issued an unconditional surrender after this atrocity. But it also came at enormous cost to Revan's forces, or so it appeared. As HK-47 later observed, Malachor 5 actually served a dual purpose. Revan had not only intended to crush the Mandalorians, but to secure his control over the army.
I do not know if you examined the records of the deaths on Malachor, but you cannot escape that many of the Jedi and Republic soldiers who died were not Revan's strongest supporters. Observation. I believe that Revan was cleaning house at Malachor 5. What ones did not die became Revan's allies against the Republic.
Nearly all of those among the Revanchists and Revan's portion of the Republic fleet who were critical of Revan's leadership had been assigned to Surik's fleet and had died in the battle. Those Jedi and Republic soldiers that survived the horrors of Malachor emerged from the fires of the Mandalorian Wars more loyal to Revan than to the Republic or the Council, and this was exactly as Revan had intended. Once the battle was over, Revan disarmed and scattered the surviving Mandalorians, claiming Mandalore's mask for his own to prevent them from choosing a new leader. Then, Revan gathered his remaining followers and led them into unknown space. The messages Revan sent back to the Republic claimed that they were hunting down Mandalorian remnants, but the truth was far more sinister. As Revan and Malak led their army into the unknown regions, they began disseminating Sith teachings through the ranks of their followers. By this point, all the surviving Revanchists had fallen to the dark side, and they eagerly embraced the ways of the Sith, as did many of the ordinary soldiers. Even as the Republic celebrated them as saviors of the galaxy, Revan and Malak vanished, and no one knew where they had gone. For months, everyone thought they were dead, though scattered sightings of the duo were reported on distant worlds. The Jedi later pieced together that, at the very least, the two traveled back to Korriban to uncover more Sith lore in the tombs there, and they had also discovered star maps on Manaan and Tatooine. These last two maps provided enough data for the two fallen Jedi to finally triangulate the location of the Star Forge. After scouting out the system, the two led their fleet to the system and claimed the Star Forge for their own. The Star Forge had once been the key to the Rakata's ancient galaxy-spanning empire. It was an immense space station that, through the power of the dark side, could use stellar matter to churn out nearly endless numbers of war droids, starfighters, and capital ships. As one of the Rakata's guardian droids put it, the Starforge was a machine of invincible might, a tool of unstoppable conquest, and Revan sought to claim it for himself. But even as he and Malak took control of the Starforge, Revan was cautious about its potential power. Even as the Starforge had helped build the Infinite Empire, its corrupting influence had also destroyed it. Revan and Malak had seen the ruin it had left firsthand on the main planet in the system, the ancient Rakatan homeworld, where all that remained of the Rakata were a few primitive tribes squabbling over what was left of their half-remembered glory. Revan was determined to not rely on the Starforge completely and to avoid letting it control him, but nonetheless, he needed its manufacturing capabilities to give him a head start on what he planned to do next. On the command deck of the Starforge, Revan and Malak each claimed the title of Darth and proclaimed themselves the Dark Lords of a new Sith Empire. Darth Revan, the stronger of the two, became the new Sith Master, forcing Darth Malak to begrudgingly accept the role of apprentice. Revan's followers swore allegiance to the new Sith Empire, and their armada was bolstered by reinforcements produced by the Starforge. At last, in 3959 BBY, a year after the Battle of Malachor 5, Revan and Malak loosed this armada against the Republic, intent on conquering the galaxy and destroying the Jedi Order. The Dark Lords revealed themselves to the galaxy in a surprise attack on the Foremost shipyards, in which Sith forces seized or destroyed most of the Republic's remaining capital ships. From their holdings in the unknown regions and the depths of Sith space, Sith forces swept across Republic space, crushing Republic forces in battle after battle and annexing swaths of the galaxy. As the Sith Empire established itself on the galactic stage, its leaders urged their former comrades in the Republic and Jedi Order to join them and help them build their new empire. And many did. The Mandalorian Wars had shaken many beings' faith in the Republic and the Jedi Council. The former was seen as weak and ineffective, while the latter was widely distrusted for its refusal to defend the Republic from the Mandalorians. In this new war with the Sith, the Jedi took to the battlefield at the head of Republic forces, but this only caused many people to distrust them even more, as it seemed evident the Jedi's principles were being arbitrarily applied by the Council. Revan and Malak, meanwhile, were heroes of the Mandalorian Wars, and even as Sith, they were still charismatic and inspired loyalty. Even as they and their followers carried out terrible atrocities such as the destruction of Telos IV, many still admired them. As a result, large portions of the Republic military defected to join the Sith, led by some of the Republic's most respected war heroes, the likes of Mon Halan, General Dered, and Admiral Kara. Many sectors joined the Sith Empire willingly, and vast numbers of Jedi left the Order to join the Sith, succumbing to the dark side and becoming acolytes, apprentices, and Dark Jedi. It was this last string of defections that earned Revan's new campaign its name, the Jedi Civil War. For 2 years, the production capabilities of the Starforge and Darth Revan's tactical genius earned the Sith a decisive advantage in this new war. Revan's armies conquered a full third of Republic space, and by 3957 BBY, the Sith Empire stretched from Korriban far into the Slice, with holdings even within the core worlds themselves. These conquests were not all the result of defections or the use of military force. Revan also employed assassination and subterfuge to selectively destabilize parts of the Republic, which could then be annexed or ignored by Sith forces. The Dark Lord's personal assassin droid, HK-47, as well as specially trained Sith assassins, eliminated prominent Jedi and key political figures alike, including at least 3 senators, Mimas Yoon of Corellia, Lelin Dor of Soreko, and an unnamed senator representing the Achani. Revan paid special attention to destabilizing Achani space, which he eventually accomplished by personally murdering the famed Achani general, Usanis. Darth Revan also paid special attention to maintaining his empire's own military infrastructure. He arranged exclusivity contracts with the Zerka Corporation to keep his forces supplied, established a Sith Academy on Korriban to maintain a constant supply of Sith acolytes and apprentices, and as his armada swept across the Republic, Revan was careful to always capture key military-industrial infrastructure intact, despite having the infinite production capabilities of the Starforge at his disposal. Indeed, Revan preferred to use the Starforge as little as possible, instead shifting increasingly more of Sith military production onto captured facility, as he was wary of the station's corrupting influence. Darth Malak strongly disagreed with this decision, seeing it as a sign of weakness, but Revan overruled his objections. Darth Revan's conquest of the Republic was unprecedented in its speed and the scale of its success, but the Republic wasn't even Revan's primary target in the Jedi Civil War.
For some reason, Revan did not feel that the Republic presented much of a military threat. Aside, I am somewhat unclear as to why this was so, but Revan did have a certain biological instinct regarding such things, so I will simply say that there were probably reasons for such an assessment. Revan felt the true war was against the Jedi.
Now, targeting the Jedi was certainly nothing new for a Sith. Revan, having embraced the Sith teachings, had come to despise the Jedi, and no doubt he derived satisfaction from the deaths of Jedi Masters who had rejected his call for the Jedi to go to war against the Mandalorians. But in the Jedi Civil War, Revan placed special focus on corrupting or terminating as many Jedi as possible. He wanted as many Jedi as possible broken to his service, and the rest were to be exterminated. Revan saw this as the true purpose of his war, with all the rest being little more than set dressing.
But Revan understood one thing. The real battle was going to be fought between the Jedi on both sides. That was the only battle that mattered. Whoever had the most, the strongest Jedi were going to win the Civil War. If Revan couldn't convert Jedi, Revan would kill them. So Revan trained elite Sith units into assassination squads, whose duty was to go out and capture enemy Jedi. I was in one of the special units trained to do this. Revan had plans for all Jedi. I think it was important that the Jedi see his side of things, the Sith teachings. Revan wanted to break them and then have them join him.
Apart from the special, non-Force sensitive assassination squads mentioned in that clip, Revan sent out his Sith assassins for the same purpose, and he sicked HK-47 on any Jedi who he doubted could be turned. Those Jedi who were captured were brought to the Trace Academy on Malachor 5, which Revan had transformed into a secret training ground where Jedi would be tortured until their minds and wills broke and the dark side consumed them. Revan's servants greatly reduced the numbers of the Jedi over the course of the war, driving the Order perilously close to extinction. But Darth Revan would not be satisfied until the last of the Jedi was either dead or consumed by the dark side, and so, even as the numbers of Jedi dwindled, the Purge continued. By 3957 BBY, Revan's forces were winning victory after victory on every front, and the Republic may well have fallen were it not for Bastila Shan, a young Jedi gifted in the art of battle meditation. Bastila was a Jedi prodigy and a staunch apologist for the Council, and her gift allowed her to turn the tide of entire battles, which allowed the Republic to win just enough battles to hold together. She was the only commander who could match Darth Revan on the battlefield, and as a result, Revan made it a priority to capture her. Bastila's capture would doom the Republic on its own, but Revan also hoped that he could turn Bastila to the dark side, allowing the Sith to make use of her gift. That year, Revan found a golden opportunity to capture Bastila. He was able to track her to a small, out-of-position Republic fleet, which he and Malak caught in a surprise attack. But this battle was a trap, and during it, Bastila and a small team of Jedi boarded Darth Revan's flagship. Their plan was similar to Revan's. They wanted to take the Dark Lord himself prisoner, hoping that, without his leadership and tactical genius, the Sith would fall apart. Bastila and the others managed to corner Revan on the bridge of his flagship, only for their plan to be thrown into chaos by Darth Malak. Malak had never been pleased with playing second fiddle to Revan, and all throughout the Jedi Civil War, he had disagreed with his master's handling of the war effort, from his reluctance to use the Starforge to its full potential to his concern for preserving Republic infrastructure rather than crushing the Republic outright. Malak believed Revan showed too many signs of weakness to be the Dark Lord. He wanted to rule the Sith Empire himself, but his ambitions had previously been checked by Revan's greater power. Malak had challenged his master a year into the Jedi Civil War, but in the resultant lightsaber duel, Revan had defeated Malak and sliced off his jaw as punishment. But when Revan was cornered by the Jedi, Malak saw another opportunity, a chance to kill all of his enemies in one fell swoop. He ordered the crew of his flagship to fire on Revan's bridge. This attack caught Revan completely off guard. His ship was destroyed, and though Bastila escaped, word soon spread across the galaxy that Darth Revan was dead. Many in the Republic celebrated this, hoping that it would be a turning point in the war, but their hopes would soon be dashed. No sooner had the galaxy learned of Darth Revan's apparent death than Darth Malak himself claimed the title of Dark Lord and picked up where his master had left off, resuming the war with the Republic. Under Malak and his new apprentice, Darth Bandon, the Sith dramatically altered their tactics. They abandoned Revan's complex plans and his desire to preserve key infrastructure in favor of pure brute force and unleashing the full capabilities of the Starforge, unleashing a reign of terror upon the galaxy. The chaos and destruction Malak caused quickly weakened what remained of the Republic, and any hope that the Sith would fall apart without Revan evaporated. Many believed that the Republic was doomed, but the Jedi Council still had an ace up its sleeve. The reports of Revan's death were a lie. He had been critically wounded in Malak's treacherous attack, but Bastila had pulled his body from the wreckage of his flagship and used the Force to keep him alive. She secretly brought him back to the Jedi Council, and after much debate, the Council decided to heal Revan's broken body and use the Force to wipe his mind. They programmed him with a new, Republic-loyal personality, crafting an identity for him as a Republic soldier under Bastila's command, and then dispatched him to the front lines. The Council knew Revan's original personality was too dangerous to keep around, but they needed information that only Revan had, the secrets of the Starforge. They hoped that, over the course of working with Bastila, enough of Revan's memories would resurface that he could help the Republic destroy the Starforge, but that enough would stay buried to prevent him from rejoining the Sith. The key to this plan was a Force bond between Bastila and Revan, which had formed when she saved his life, and which the Council hoped could allow her to access Revan's lost memories. It was a desperate gambit, but it was the only hope the Republic had left. In mid-3956 BBY, Revan was serving under Bastila aboard the cruiser Endar Spire when it was ambushed and destroyed by a Sith battle fleet above Taris. Revan, assisted by the Republic war hero Carth Onasi, made it off the ship aboard the last escape pod. Bastila had escaped as well, so the Sith occupied Taris and put the entire planet under quarantine to prevent her from making it off the planet. Revan and Carth spent the next few weeks scouring the different levels of Taris' planetary city for Bastila, avoiding Sith patrols, swoop gangs, and monstrous rat ghouls as they went. Revan eventually rescued Bastila from one of the planet's swoop gangs, and the three began working to escape the planet. Along the way, they recruited a number of other allies, among them the street urchin Mission Vow, the Wookiee exile Zalbar, the astromech T3M4, and the Mandalorian mercenary Canderous Auto. Canderous ultimately helped the party steal a ship, the light freighter Ebon Hawk, from Taris' local crime lord, which Revan and company used to flee the planet. They escaped with seconds to spare, fleeing just as Malak ordered the entire surface of Taris destroyed to prevent Bastila's escape. From Taris, the crew of the Ebon Hawk fled to Dantooine, where Bastila reported the events of the mission to the Jedi Council. While on Taris, Revan's Force sensitivity and a few scattered memories of his last duel with Bastila began to emerge again, to Bastila's concern, and after the Hawk landed on Dantooine, both Revan and Bastila had another vision, this time of Revan and Malak's discovery of the first star map. After Bastila reported this to the Jedi Council, the Council decided to retrain Revan as a Jedi, knowing that his Force sensitivity couldn't safely be ignored now that it had re-emerged. Once Revan's initial retraining was complete, the Council dispatched him, Bastila, and their allies to find the star maps, hoping to locate the Starforge and stop the Sith once and for all. Like Revan and Malak had years before, Revan and Bastila used the incomplete Dantooine star map to locate others on Tatooine, Kashyyyk, and Manaan. Along the way, they recruited more allies, among them the troubled Jedi apprentice, Juhani, the ex-Jedi hermit, Jolie Bindo, and, against all odds, HK-47. Revan and Bastila continued to experience visions of Revan's past, and as the two worked closely together over the course of their mission, a bond of a more romantic sort developed between them. All the while, Revan continued to grow all the more powerful. He killed the renowned bounty hunter Calo Nord and Darth Bandon himself, and his former skill and strength in the Force began to rapidly return to him. Nonetheless, Revan didn't learn of his true identity until after the Ebon Hawk was captured by the Sith interdictor ship Leviathan, where he, Bastila, and Carth came face to face with Malak himself. Malak revealed the truth to Revan and attempted to kill him once and for all, but Bastila sacrificed herself so that Revan and the others could escape the Leviathan, allowing herself to be captured. With no other choice, the crew of the Ebon Hawk abandoned her for a time, continuing on to Korriban to find the final star map. While the Jedi Council feared that Revan would be drawn back to the dark side if he discovered his true identity, Revan remained committed to the Jedi, becoming determined to atone for his past crimes. On Korriban, during his mission to find the final star map, he infiltrated the Sith Academy and convinced many of the students there to turn away from the dark side, and he ultimately left the Academy in a state of civil war after defeating its headmaster. With the final star map found, Revan and the rest led the Republic fleet to Rakata Prime, hoping to destroy the Starforge and defeat the Sith once and for all. There, Revan discovered to his horror that Bastila had fallen to the dark side and become Malak's new apprentice. As the Republic fleet attacked the Starforge, she used her battle meditation against them, preventing Admiral Dodona and the fleet from breaking the Sith lines. It fell to Revan to board the Starforge and confront Bastila, who he ultimately convinced to return to the light and use her battle meditation to aid the Republic in atonement for her crimes. As the tide of the battle turned, Revan went on to confront Malak, who he fought in one last duel. In the end, Revan triumphed and Malak was slain. Shortly thereafter, the Republic destroyed the Starforge and the Sith were utterly routed. In the aftermath of the Battle of Rakata Prime, the Sith Empire descended into a brief but brutal civil war, destroying itself in a matter of months. Against all odds, the Republic emerged triumphant from the Jedi Civil War, all because of Revan, the one who had started the war in the first place. Revan was acknowledged publicly as a hero of the Republic once more, and he was formally welcomed back into the Jedi Order, proclaimed that he had been redeemed to the light side. He and Bastila got married, and they laid plans for starting a family. Now is a good time to pause and ask a rather important question. Was Revan truly redeemed? After all, even after he defeated Malak, he still only remembered bits and flashes of his former life. It's worth wondering whether he was really still Revan at all, or whether the new personality the Jedi Council had created had completely overtaken him. This question ties into a larger, more complicated question about Revan's motives all throughout this saga, from the Mandalorian Wars to the end of the Jedi Civil War. Revan's decision to defy the Council and join the Mandalorian Wars was perhaps the only thing he ever did where his motivations were clear. He was genuinely motivated by compassion for the innocents being butchered by the Mandalorians, as well as outraged over the Council's inaction. After that, though, everything becomes sort of murky, muddled by the dark side and the complexity of Revan's plans. It's even unclear when exactly he truly fell to the dark side. Most sources agree it happened during the Mandalorian Wars, but others imply that it only happened after, while Vrook Lamar once claimed that he believed it had happened before Revan had left for the war in the first place. In KOTOR 2, Kreia presents a fascinating alternative theory, which we've discussed in the past, that Revan was never consumed by the dark side at all.
And there is something that the Council may never understand, that perhaps Revan never fell. The difference between a fall and a sacrifice is sometimes difficult, but I feel that Revan understood that difference more than anyone knew. The galaxy would have fallen if Revan had not gone to war. Perhaps he became the Dark Lord out of necessity, to prevent a greater evil.
This prospect is fascinating, and given the 4D chess nonsense Revan was prone to, it isn't impossible. It implies that Revan believed it necessary that the Republic be transformed into a militarized empire, and that the Jedi be transformed into the Sith, not out of allegiance to Sith ideology, but for strategic reasons. Perhaps he believed that the Republic would be stronger that way, and that the Mandalorian Wars proved that it was far too weak to resist existential threats. That, of course, would require there to be an existential threat of such magnitude that Revan would create a Sith empire to oppose it. But we're getting a little ahead of ourselves here. Now, we presented this theory a little uncritically in the past, but it's worth pointing out that there's evidence against it. Kreia herself describes how, during the Mandalorian Wars, Revan grew to despise weakness and make use of brutal tactics on the battlefield, which doesn't exactly scream not really dark side to us. Revan's research into Sith lore and Korriban and Malachor went a bit beyond what this sort of ruse would require, and the notion that Revan never fell to the dark side is pretty thoroughly dismantled by the contents of Revan's Sith holocron. In this holocron, he preached the rule of the strong, that mercy and trust were weaknesses, and that the pursuit of the power of the dark side should be the #1 priority in life. That holocron confirms that Revan did genuinely believe in at least parts of Sith ideology. But Kreia's theory does still have a grain of truth in it. Revan was driven to that ideology in the first place because he believed it a tactical necessity. During this conversation, Kreia also says something else that seems much more likely to be correct.
I do not believe the Jedi Council changed Revan as they claimed. They merely stripped away the surface and allowed the true self to emerge again, someone who was willing to wage war to save others. But that is my belief, since I knew Revan from long ago, as a master knows their apprentice.
This provides one possible answer to our original question, that Revan was truly redeemed because the personality the Jedi Council imposed was only surface level, and Revan's true self was too strong to be completely erased. That last point is pretty much uncontested, given how Revan's original memories were eventually able to bubble to the surface. This suggests that all the Jedi Council really did, apart from giving Revan a fake backstory, was free him from the loss of perspective he suffered during the Mandalorian Wars. They purged the corruption of the dark side and the scars of the Mandalorian Wars from Revan, reverting him back to what he had been when he joined the war all those years before. A zealous Jedi Crusader firmly committed to protecting the innocent. There's no evidence against this theory and plenty of evidence for it. HK-47, for instance, agreed with Kreia, believing that the compassion and strong drive to protect others Revan displayed after his redemption was something innate rather than something the Jedi Council had forced on him. It was strengthened by Revan's love for Bastila and by positive reinforcement from his other companions, shaping Revan into the Jedi hero he was always destined to be. But Revan's story didn't end with his redemption and his defeat of Malak. For 2 years after Rakata Prime, Revan and Bastila lived happily on Coruscant together, now and again departing to pursue missions for the Council or the Republic. On one of these missions, Revan led a military expedition to Korriban in which he drove those Sith who were still left after the Sith War into the depths of wild space. The Republic was still in a bad way, but the Sith were largely defeated after this, and an uneasy peace returned to the galaxy. But as Carth Onasi later put it was like the war wasn't over for Revan. Memories of his old life kept coming back to him, and one in particular bothered him. Visions of a world shrouded in darkness, racked by constant storms. He began to remember that there had been something else out there in the depths of unknown space, something he and Malak had found on Malachor 5, and in 3954 BBY, he finally set out to find it. Before he left, he led Canderous Ordo to the remote planet Erekiad, where he had hidden the Mask of Mandalore all those years before. Revan gave the mask to Canderous, tasking him with reuniting the Mandalorian clans before telling the new Mandalore what he had remembered at last.
Do you know what he told me in those last days on the Outer Rim? That the Mandalorian Wars were our doom, and that we had been deceived, that it had never been our decision to wage war on the Republic. Revan said the Mandalorians didn't invade the Republic space 10 years ago because it was our choice. We were tricked. Our entire people sacrificed as pawns, and never knew it. He said there was a war coming, that it was waiting out in the unknown regions, in the dark, waiting for us to destroy each other.
A war? This war?
No, not this one. Another one. More terrible. Against an evil we couldn't begin to comprehend. A war of belief that had been fought for thousands of years. Revan went off to fight.
Revan then left all of his companions, save only T3M4, behind. He travelled into the unknown regions and he never returned. Eventually, he even sent T3 and the Ebon Hawk back to known space, where his loyal astromech found Mitra Surik, who, after destroying the last of the Sith remnants, followed Revan into the unknown regions, where she found the threat Revan had been preparing for all this time. The true Sith. For over a millennium, a splinter of the original Sith Empire had been biding its time out in the depths of space, preparing for its revenge against the Republic. It had manipulated the Mandalorians into going to war against the Republic to soften the Republic up in preparation for its own invasion, and as he lay dying, Mandalore the Ultimate had told this to Revan. After Malachor, Revan and Malak had followed the trail of these true Sith back to its source, and they discovered a threat beyond the Republic's darkest dreams. The true Sith Empire had a vast armada just waiting to sweep over the weakened Republic, and it was led by Sith Lords of fearsome power whose techniques could drain life from planets and create wounds in the Force. Revan knew that this was a threat that neither the Republic nor the Jedi were strong enough to face. The Republic was too weak and dysfunctional to withstand such an assault, and he knew from his experiences in the Mandalorian Wars that the atrocity the true Sith could create would inevitably corrupt the Jedi, drawing them to the dark side and making them Sith. This, at least partially, was why Revan started the Jedi Civil War. He believed that the Republic needed to be made strong to resist the Sith onslaught, that it needed to be converted into an empire that could harness the full potential of its industrial might to resist the Sith. He also believed that the coming war would inevitably break the Jedi Order, that when faced with the horrors of war, the Jedi would be transformed into Sith, and so Revan set out to make them his Sith, aligned against the threat in the unknown regions. This was why Revan had placed such emphasis on converting or destroying the Jedi, to deny that possibility to the true Sith. It was also why his conquest of the Republic took such care to leave infrastructure intact, so that it could be used for the war against the true Sith. What Revan did in the Jedi Civil War, he had done to stop the true Sith. Of course, Revan's original plan to stop the true Sith was tainted by his fall to the dark side and his experiences in the Mandalorian Wars. It was born out of a complete lack of faith in the Jedi and the Republic and a disgust for the so-called weakness they embodied. Revan's solution to the threat of the true Sith would have been little better than a true Sith conquest of the galaxy. The dark side could never truly be controlled, and it would always lead to the same end. Revan was drawn in by the dark side's promises of power and the allure of empire. But the redeemed Revan had learned better. His experiences at the end of the Jedi Civil War showed him that the Jedi and the Republic were stronger than he had once believed, and he had come to acknowledge the self-destructive nature of the dark side as well as of militarized empires. A new approach was needed. So Revan had tasked his allies with preparing for the onslaught. He had sent Canderous to rebuild the strength of the Mandalorians, knowing that he would ally with the Jedi and the Republic against the true Sith when the time came. He tasked now Admiral Carthanasi with keeping the Republic safe and helping it rebuild, and he left Bastila to pass on the lessons the two of them had learned through their redemption during the Jedi Civil War. And Revan himself departed for the unknown regions, setting out to confront the true Sith, to strike a blow that would delay their invasion or cripple them for a time. He failed and was captured, but Mitra Surik followed him to Sith space, and she was able to rescue him. Surik returned Revan's mask to him, which she had been given by Bastila. Upon putting it on, all of Revan's old memories returned, and the two of them set out to stop the true Sith. Their next attempt also failed, and Revan was captured again. This time, he was held in stasis for centuries and tortured by the worst the Sith had to offer. But in stasis, Revan was able to manipulate the Sith, slowing down their plans for conquest so that it took 300 years for the invasion to begin. By that point, the Republic had recovered, and the true Sith were, in the end, defeated. Most of that fight was fought by other heroes. Revan was freed from his imprisonment and joined the war against the true Sith, but he didn't live to see the war's end. He cheated death a few times before finally succumbing, but in the end, Revan found peace in the Force at last. Revan passed into history as one of the most significant figures of the old Sith Wars, as well as one of the most divisive. Most honored him as a Jedi hero who had saved the galaxy several times over, despite causing plenty of trouble on his own. Even the Sith remembered him fondly, revering him as one of their greatest before his corruption by the Jedi. But the truth was more along the lines of what Darth Malak said to Revan before their final battle aboard the Starforge.
Savior, conqueror, hero, villain, you are all things, Revan, and yet you are nothing. In the end, you belong to neither the light nor the darkness. You will forever stand alone.
So, that was our re-examination of the story of Revan, one of the most fascinating figures in galactic history. But what do you think? Would you like to see more Revan content in the future? What's your take on his 4D chess? Let us know all that and more in the comments section below. And as always guys, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.